Good morning. So glad everyone's here today, that everyone chose this. We are in the process of a 13-part series of the principles of being, the universal principles of being. And last week the first principle was, or the second week, last week the first principle was the principle of being, capital B, being. This week the principle is of absolute unity. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean our church. That doesn't mean the unity movement. That means absolute unity. The principle of absolute unity. That means there could be no separation. The one power, the one presence. I don't need you to believe in the same God that I do. I mean, one would hope you wouldn't, because my God is not fully evolved yet. I haven't yet. I still put some personality into my God, and what we're looking to do is get all the personality out of God and all the presence that we could possibly have into God. When I'm looking up absolute unity with God, and I thought, oh, that means there could be nothing out of order. There could be nothing. There's distractions to the perfect order of things. There's a lot of distractions, wouldn't you agree? Really? I can't be the only one that thinks that. Yes. I thank you. There's lots of distractions. And what's upsetting is you're not the only one causing them. I create some of the distractions myself. I wish it was just everybody else, that I could just go ahead and blame everybody else. It's your fault. And I'm off the hook. I'm alone, but I'm off the hook. I'm lonely, but I'm off the hook. It's your fault. When you change, we'll all be happy. Wouldn't that just seem to be? Well, that's the path of misery. I used to be on that path, and that's not the path of absolute unity, because in the path of absolute unity, there's not you and me. Now, granted, we all dress differently. We all put different skin on. We put different, well, I was going to say hair, but you know what I mean. We put different personalities on. What movie was it? They were talking about it yesterday, the Prosperity Plus class, Cocoon, where it's been years since I've seen it, and I don't remember, but they were talking about it, where he asked her to take her clothes off, and she took off her skin, and she was just light. She was just a light being. Or she was a being light. But I looked up absolute unity, because I wanted to get a deeper perception than what I already had. And I love some of this. God transcends all created things. Neither time and space nor any other factors of creation apply to God. God is not subject to anything except God's own unchanging self. Therefore, we say God is. I remember early on in my Unity teachings, a teacher put up in the word, God does not exist. And I thought, that's interesting. God does not exist. And I believe it. God does not exist. Because to exist, one would have to come out of something. Would have to exit out of something. The Creator did not exit out of something. That which is the Creator. Not the Creator I created in my head. See, because God, as evolved as I am, God is still created in my image and likeness more than I'm created in God's image and likeness in my mind. In my temper tantrums. And my stuff. So I'm still limiting God. And the reason I took this job, the reason I wrote in these books, and the reason I've been studying all these years, is so that I will not create God in my image and likeness any longer, but I will allow God to be what God is, so that I can be what I am. Imagine the freedom, giving yourself the freedom to be what you am. Just imagine that. All the time, I am what I am, and I'm not going to make myself into something else. Wouldn't that be a cool day? Wouldn't that just be the best day ever? Where I'm not trying to make you into something you're not. and I'm not trying to make me into something I'm not. That, you know, I like to live my life as like I'm on vacation, as I have said, but boy, that would be some trip. To just be as I am and not try to create it, not judge it, not define it, not limit it, not put me in a box, not put you in a box. So if you look at this, neither time nor space nor any factors of creation apply to God. So eternal, all-powerful, which means with absolute power, all-knowing with absolute knowledge, which means knowledge itself, which means power itself, alive, which is self-existent. I like this. All-sufficient, needs aid from nothing, which means God doesn't need my help for God to be God. How about that? That means I don't have to do God's work anymore for Him. God doesn't need my help to make perfection perfect. What a relief. Absolutely independent, is not influenced, and is without any accident. Non-material, not within time or space, without any form or body. God is not male, female, any combination of the two, or any other gender. Non-spatial, is not located anywhere in space. He is not contained, does not fill anything, is not a force in any physical thing. Invisible. Since God is not physical, God can and never will be seen. It is not even that God is physical, but clear like air. Immutable, does not change, since change is dependent upon factors of physical reality, time, space, motion. God transcends all these. Any change regarding God would mean imperfection. God has no need for motion to take up space. We're grasping here that God is perfect as God is. Therefore, we must be perfect as we are. That's an absolute unity, absolute capital A, absolute unity, which is a tough concept to really wrap our minds around, especially if we are committed to a physical world that needs to be changed, that needs to be different, that needs to be... I've often said that peacemakers have a difficult time with peace because they'd be out of work. We don't make peace. We allow peace to be. We don't make joy. We don't make love. We allow it to be. And when we begin... so often, in unity, the unity movement, they have this peacemaking thing that I find to be... The leaders seem to be some of the angriest people I have ever met. The people who are drawn to this particular program, and it's not a very productive program these days in the unity movement, because the people are just furious people who just seem to be creating anything but peace. They seem to be going in to look for all the problems. And so, you know, problem solvers. Well, if we solve the problem, then they're out of a job. So they got to go look for a new gig. I got to go dig up a problem over here. I got to go dig up some unrest over here. And so to allow God to be what God is means to allow me to be what I am. And when that happens, I won't be resisting life anymore. And when I stop resisting life, there's not going to be a problem. There's not going to be war. There's not going to be famine. There's not going to be lack. There's not going to be any of those things because I'm not going to be creating them so I can solve them. In absolute unity, no separation. No separation. We are all one. Therefore, we will realize we are all abundant. There is more than enough for all. Let me go on here. I love this. Without partners. For plurality can only apply to existences subject to time, space, and other factors of creation. Additionally, a need of a partner or partners would mean God would be lacking or incomplete, thus negating God's being all-sufficient, all-powerful, independent, as well as incorporeity. Never heard that word before. Plural, independent wills equal in transcendence cannot exist together. They would cancel each other's power, or else one would be more powerful than the other, in which case one of them would not be truly transcendent. God knows our thoughts and needs without the use of a mediator or middleman, and God's mercy, compassion, and grace are sufficient without the help of another. Which means I have everything I need within me. It's nice to go to what I perceive as another, to pray, to visit and everything. But if it is to do anything other than realize the oneness of each other, then I'm falling short of the ideal. You know, Jesus didn't need his disciples in order to validate his godness. Jesus didn't need the multitudes in order to validate who he was. He sought fellow students, fellow truth students. He sought out those who had been seeking his understanding of truth. He made himself available to those who were seeking his understanding of truth as he understood it, if that makes sense. Not too repetitive. He availed himself. He wasn't worried about 1, 2. He didn't count how many. We don't read how many. You hear about the 5,000, but we don't know how many people there were. Nobody was counting heads back then. Those are numbers put in the Bible to give you an estimate of, like, this was a big crowd. This was a lot of people here in the field who didn't have food. And so to give you a number, most of the numbers in the Bible are not accurate numbers for the days and the nights and what have you. They are symbols in order to give us an idea of what's going on here. And so, but Jesus, like I said, didn't need validation, just as you and I don't need validation. We don't need each other's approval. Isn't that a relief? Because quite frankly, none of us has the authority to give it. There's not one person in this room, me included, who has the authority to approve of anyone. Not one of us. And thank goodness you don't have the authority to approve of me or disapprove, and vice versa. Therefore, your parents don't have the authority to approve or disapprove of you. They have the opportunity to guide or misguide. Those of you who are parents, you have the opportunity to guide or misguide your children. You hear that, parents? You have the opportunity to guide or misguide your children. If you want to properly guide your children, you have to go within and seek perfect guidance from your own highest consciousness. And there's not one person in this room who could tell me they can't hear that voice, because I know in my greatest insanity, I've heard the right voice. I've heard the voice that says, Shawn, if you want to be sane today, you think this, you say this, you do this. If you want to be joyous and free today, this is what you do. And sometimes I say, thank you, but I have other plans. I'm going to be insane today, and I'm going to argue, and I'm going to resist, and I'm going to whatever. I'm going to go out of principle because I'm too afraid that being in principle would cost me something. If I'm in principle, that means I'm not going to be right. That means if I'm not right, that means they're going to get away with it. Well, what's there to get away with? If I like myself as I am in this moment, then every horrible thing anyone's ever thought, said, or done to me is just in perfect right order. It's brought me to this moment. But if I need them to know, David and I have a friend who just, she can't let her husband get away with what he did 10 years ago. So therefore, rather than choosing the peace that she knows is available right here, right now, right this second, she's still going to make one more dig. Just one more. And I watch that and I think, okay, how do I identify? Where do I still have to make one more dig? Where do I still have to make somebody pay till they get it, what they did to me? I got a couple of neighbors. Some of you heard me talk about them before. Who I still, when I see them, I never talk. It's not that we don't speak. We don't see each other. You know, if I do, I'm in a car, and so I think. Yeah, but my head goes up when I see them. And I think, Shawn, just say the word Christ right now. Just sit in this car and not swearing Christ. You know, they put the right inflection on it. David had me do that once. He pulled out a book from the minister's office in the city, and he said, Shawn, what's the name of this book? Well, I knew what he wanted, so I said, Jesus Christ, who are you? The book is called Jesus Christ, who are you? There is a difference. It's all about inflection a lot of times. But the word Christ for me is a very active, healing word. Christ reminds me of who I am, and so I go that far. Christ in me is awakened now. Christ in me speaks to you. Christ in me speaks to your Christ. So that, because you see, here's the deal. I might be right about what the interaction that went on between the neighbor years ago. This is 6 years ago. I got to tell you, 6 years ago. We never argued. We've never truly argued. It's just an unkindness happened that I felt, and so my ego still feels persecuted on the block. Like, what are they thinking about me? You know, I know they must be thinking this, and it's like, really? Shawn, you have the power. That's the funny part here. I have the power to send abundant love throughout the neighborhood. I have the power to see abundant love in every leaf of every tree, on every blade of grass in the neighborhood, in the river in the backyard. I have the abundant power within me to choose love all the time. I don't say unkind things about the neighbors. I don't play that game. Even at home, I almost never make fun of them in any way. I don't want to do that, but I'm still having difficulty when I look out my window seeing love. And that's my choice. It's not their choice, that's me. I have it within me to see absolute unity. Spread across the river, the lake, through all the yards. That absolute unity, that perfect vision I'm like Superman, I can see through walls. It can penetrate kryptonite. Love can penetrate kryptonite. Love can penetrate the greatest resistance when I want to experience love in its purest form. But when I want to also resist, now we have two walls of resistance. And not even kryptonite can penetrate that. Can penetrate that resistance to love. That resistance to peace. But love can penetrate the greatest resistance. And it's absolute unity. I want to, I really like this section of this article. It is a common assumption and mistake to think that the Creator is infinite or all-powerful. I like how they put this, in the sense that He can do anything imaginable. This is false. The Creator is not a one which can be infinitely divided. So that one type of infinity that doesn't apply to the Creator. One could say that the Creator is infinite in its perfection and authority, but I wouldn't go much further. The Creator is definitely not infinite numerically or spatially, nor infinite in the sense that He can do anything imaginable. Can He make both atheism and theism correct? Can He kill Himself? Can He make moral absolutism and moral relativism both correct at the same time? Can He lie? Can He change? No. Thank goodness. That's the cool part. That's why we study this New Thought message. To find out God cannot change. That which is cannot change. That is absolute unity. That is our ticket home. That God, that what we name God, cannot change at all. Never will change. It is perfect unto itself. So the only thing that has to change, which I do seem to have an infinite amount of, is a divine idea. That's all that has to change is my ideas. My ideas to keep expanding. My possibility, my belief in possibility, to keep expanding. And every time I hit a block, I need a bigger idea. And every time I start to make it small and get it fit into a box, I need to get a bigger idea. And I get that from within. I love this. If God could lie or change, then how can we rely on God any more than we rely on other people? There's logic. Charles Fillmore, Unity's co-founder, always used logic in his teachings. If God could lie or change, then how can we rely on God any more than we rely on other people? If God is more powerful than people and can lie and change, I would trust God even less than people. I think the fact that the Creator cannot do these things does not decrease his perfection, rather it magnifies his exaltedness above imperfection. This only limits him from imperfection. If he is perfect within himself, then he has no need for improvement or change. And he is immune from imperfection and degeneration. Now, what happened for me several years ago is I decided I wanted to know God more than I wanted to be a good person. I decided I wanted to know God more than I wanted to be a likable person. I decided I wanted to know God more than I wanted prosperity. I decided I wanted to know God more than I wanted to know comfort. I decided, now I can't tell you I haven't lapsed a bit over the years, but at one point I really decided this. And my life shifted radically. Just radically. I kind of had the Solomon experience, the King Solomon series, where I wanted an understanding mind. Not so I could get stuff, but so that I could be so wildly confident that whether I had stuff or not, I was good and complete and whole. Whether I wanted the confidence so that I would never have to look at you, any one of you, and see less than perfection. And we're talking, when I say you, I mean the general you. It was long before I ever thought about coming to Norwalk, long before I'd ever heard of Norwalk, Connecticut. I decided that I would rather know God than be right about my childhood. I would rather know God than be mad at my mother. I would rather know God. And when I say know God, what I'm talking about is an energy, a light, a beingness that I couldn't describe, that I couldn't conceive of. It was just too much. That's what I decided I wanted. And I've experienced it many, many, many times. I wanted to know God, G-O-D, infinite expression, meaning without space and time. Because I didn't want, I'm so addicted to time, and I didn't want to be addicted to time anymore. I didn't want to concern myself with that. I didn't want to concern myself with anything that was less than nice, than fun, than joy, than love. I didn't want to be bothered with what wasn't. I didn't want to fear money anymore. I wanted to be master of all that came into my being. I wanted to know that all my needs are met all the time. I wanted to know that I would be well fed, that I would be abundantly satisfied, that everything, that I wouldn't have to search for the love of my life and keep missing it. I wanted to know God. I wanted to know God. And so I got on my knees. And I surrendered several times a day. I'd never prayed on my knees in my life until somebody said, get down on your knees and pray. No, I didn't get down on my knees and say, oh God, you are the best thing ever. I got down on my knees and I said, the Christ in me is awakened now. Or I would sit quietly in a chair and say, the Christ in me is awakened now. I would sit and then I would breathe as we did last week. The Christ in me is awakened now. The God in me is awakened now. The Shawn in me is awakened now. The best part of me is awakened now. And that was sufficient. I stopped asking for stuff. I stopped saying, oh God, please give me, because I found every time I started saying, God, please give me, I had more thoughts of more things I didn't have. So I was living in even greater lack than when I started. Imagine desiring God more than you desire anything else. It's not a sacrifice. I promise you, it's not a sacrifice. I promise you, your life will be better than ever. What you will see around you will be filled with so many riches, and you won't fear losing it. I promise. Health will begin to increase. Relationships will be more harmonious. You will see abundance in places you had never spotted it before. You will have ahas at every corner. And forgiveness will become a snap. Total 100% forgiveness will become a snap when you don't ask God for anything, but you begin to accept what has already been given and what will always be. You won't have to work at changing yourself ever again, because the changes you will see is you will suddenly become who you are instead of who you never were. The principle, the divine law of absolute unity is that God will never change, and you will never change who you actually are. Thank you so much.